without further ado, I'd like to introduce this evening's events. We are delighted to welcome to Skojak's Evening of Klezmer. Thank you for everyone for coming. We're privileged to be joined by two phenomenal musicians, Michael Alpert and Gica Loening. Michael Alpert is a pioneer in the figure of the Renaissance of Eastern European Jewish music and Yiddish culture since the 1970s, and is a National Heritage Fellow of the United States, the US's highest honor of traditional and heritage artists. Gica is a Scots and klezmer fiddler and a music professional, director of Edinburgh's Fun Fiddle Project, and a seasoned fiddler, teacher, and player. She is a leading community music practitioner and specializing in early year projects, and runs the East Lothian Youth Music Initiative. Gica and Michael have been playing together since 2017 and exploring the meeting points of Scottish and Jewish music and highlighting the unique world of Yiddish music within Scotland today. And without further ado, I'd like to pass it on to Gica and Michael to take us through the evening.
Hi everyone, good evening. We're
Hi.
The mic is plugged in, yeah? Oh, great, okay, so hi, we're very delighted to be here with you from a remote location in the Highlands. I know it maybe sounds a little bit like Harry Potter, but we're here from Inverlever on the high above beautiful Loch near Oban, and so we're a little bit of a kind of so backcountry improvised program tonight.
Yay.
I
Hope you enjoy the evening. We have a little live audience behind you who are all waving. So, this is the first time doing a Zoom gig like this, where actually it's not just like me by myself in a room or you by yourself in a room, but actually we have a whole evening with lots of others here, and all of you guys wherever you are. So fantastic to see you all. Okay.
Yeah, I see that. I see that.
So just switch off.
Good. So what Gica and I are playing tonight, and what we generally do as a duo, is old time East European Jewish music, music from the instrumental klezmer tradition, and songs, some of them very old time ballads. And since I've lived in Scotland for the last 7.5 years, I mean, I often say that the place to kind of put this in terms of Yiddish musical traditions and Yiddish culture, East European Jewish culture, is that this is the equivalent of Scottish fiddle tunes and Scottish traditional dance tunes and Scottish traditional ballads and songs, as well as some of the newer composed stuff in both Yiddish and in English that some of us have been writing in the last number of years, similar to the so much of the neo-traditional creativity here in Scottish traditions and in Isles traditions in general. So we're going to continue with a couple of
Ahora
tunes.
and Costil, I think. Yeah.
No. Yeah.
What is it? Anyway, we'll play.
Right. The second tune is was because a lot of this music is the klezmer music is not only for dancing, but it's so much out of the context of traditional Jewish weddings in Eastern Europe, and then there are versions that have continued to this day wherever East European Jews are in the world. So the second melody that we'll play is one that was used for specifically playing for the groom, because often, and I think in a lot of traditions in the world, if there were cultures that have arranged marriages, sometimes groom and bride wouldn't even meet each other, or would only have met once or twice before the wedding. But that's not the case here. So,
and this first tune is a slow horror in D, and I would like to dedicate it to Herbie in Germany. Herbie, it's one of the first tunes we played when we went on that little trip to Germany, and I remember playing it with you.
there's always, you know, so through this entire pandemic era, and when so many of us, especially who are performers and of one kind or another, have adjusted to going on to doing things via Zoom and online and so forth. It's interesting. And it's kind of almost a little jarring to put it together with as Gica was saying, with folks here, because you know it's so much of a pleasure to have, you know, folks here actually listening, and at the same time there's that, you know, that strange thing that many of us have gotten used to over the past year and a half of kind of trying to project something into the camera, and so,
Hopefully it's working.
yeah.
That's all I can say.
We're hybrid.
We are. So you're going to sing a song?
Yeah, I am going to sing a song. So, some people out there who know some of what's been going on in American, both traditional music and in American traditional based songwriting over the last, at this point, 30, 40 years, as well as people that may be aware of some of the musical relationship of that to the labor movement and labor organizing in the United States, may be familiar with the singing and the wonderful songs of Sai Khan. Sai Khan is someone who's been both a singer and songwriter for many years, and also a labor organizer down in North Carolina, particularly working with folks in the textile mills. And I think that's another point of connection with tradition in Scotland. The Eastern United States and Eastern North America, Canada too, is a place where various kinds of mills and mill towns developed and sprang up, and whether they're textile mills, steel mills, coal mines that were connected to, you know, those industries, lumber mills, the whole thing, the struggles of people in for better wages and better working conditions in mills and mill towns is something I think very much that both Scotland and a great deal of, you know, particularly Eastern North America has in common, and not only limited to those two parts of the world either. So in any case, for many years I wondered whether Sai Khan had written anything about his Jewish roots, and because I believe his father or his grandfather was a cantor, and then apparently he's written quite a bit about that make some in his songs in English that make reference to his East European Jewish roots. And this is a song he wrote about his grandfather, and the song's in English, so you'll all be able to hear the story. It's for his grandfather that came from the Russian Empire, either early in the 20th century or late in the 19th century, and came to North America. And like a lot of our families, in part left there because of the institution of conscription into the Russian army, especially around the time of the Russo-Japanese War in 1904, 1905, the First World War, and this wasn't an issue it wasn't just an issue of absence of patriotism, but at that point the Russian Empire was a place that was officially anti-Semitic, and it wasn't very such a great place to be any kind of almost anyone in some ways, but to be any kind of national minority. So there's a song called Crossing the Border, which says a lot about
Oh,
what we do in our,
I thought it was something
lives.
else you were doing. I'll get my phone. I was ready to sit back there and listen to a ballad.
And there's that's true. But this is a different kind of a ballad. So there's a chorus, and I hope all
Just
of
relaxing there.
our friends live and in the flesh here will sing along, and out there in Radio Land, you can do the same. As a young man, he traveled through Russia with his uncle and two other singers, till they drafted him into the army, and he had to escape from there. When the guards that they arrived at the border started shooting at him and the others, they turned back, but he kept on going, and kept going for 92 years. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. Come go, come go, come go. He booked passage to Nova Scotia, was married in Manitoba. He worked for the Canadian Pacific, carried hog while they built the hotel. Land was $1 an acre, but he was too careful to buy it. So when they found oil on it, he still had the story to tell. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. Come go, come go, come go. Then he moved down south of the border to the mills on the Merrimack River. Kept storing pump gas for a living, and he raised up his daughters and sons. He'd sit at the head of the table, drink an egg and half-pint bottle of whiskey, and I wonder how someone so gentle could have done all the things that he'd done. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. Come go, come go, come go. got old and he lived by the ocean. I went with my children to see him. He looked through the cataracts at them, but I think that he saw them just right. We buried him up in New England, and they say that's home to the wanderer, but home is where the heart is, and my heart's with my lady tonight. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. Come go, come go, come go. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. We are crossing the border. Come go, come go, come go. Thanks, everyone. That's more the, it's like the Scottish experience of having everybody singing along. And
Lovely,
yeah,
really great.
yeah.
I don't know if you can hear the singing out there across the world, but we've got a great chorus line here. So, talking of crossing the border, my parents arrived in Edinburgh in 1959 with me in the womb, and a few suitcases and a 5-foot lily in a pot in the back of their really old kind of antique car. So they arrived in Edinburgh, and yeah, it was so then they grew up in England all those years before that. They'd come from Berlin. It's 1,060 miles, I looked it up, from Berlin to Edinburgh, and that's the city that they fled from with their parents when they were young. And my mum arriving in a washing basket in London.
When was that?
So that was 30, would have been about 36 or something. Yeah. So anyway, and then all these years later, they ended up in Edinburgh with the suitcases and the 5-foot lily and me in the womb. And, so Edinburgh was a pretty kind of dark and chilly place back in the 1960s. It was very conservative as well. And it was really dark, because I don't know if anybody knew Edinburgh in the 60s. It was before the sandstone was cleaned, and it was a very dark place. And in the city anyway. And also it suffers big time from the Har, which is what we get on the East Coast. So the Har rolls in, and it was like these black tenements. And as a family, we'd lived there a few years by then. My parents had sort of worked hard to put down roots and settle in. They were always like a little bit different from everyone else, with their kind of European ways and all of that. And so it was in 1972 that we got in the car, having been there a few years and experienced the Har for a long time, got in the car to drive out into the countryside and see how far we had to drive before we would escape the Har. So it was exactly 12 miles southeast of Edinburgh. And we came across this old derelict courtyard. The sun had appeared. Some disruption in the audience. What's she whispering about?
I'm wondering if the world knows what a Har is.
A Har, of course they do. Most of you live in Scotland, don't you? So a Har is fog. It's like, okay, thank you. No more heckling, please. Just ignore them. So the Har is thick fog, is a thick fog, impenetrable fog. Okay, so we'd escaped the Har, we were out in the sunshine, and there we stumbled across this old derelict courtyard. And an old deserted, like a Morris Minor wrecked traveller sitting in the middle of, it was like an old post van sitting in the middle of the courtyard. So this place was to become my family home. One after quite a lot of work. And by 1974, we'd moved in and we'd been building, digging, planting, growing, and it became the place where that my family still lives in, and that has become a kind of our home, and very much the kind of permanent home now of the family and of my parents, who are now 88 and 90. I don't know if they're there or not, but they might be. And so where was I in the story? Yeah. It was also the place where I tried to explore my music. And music was quite a struggle growing up. I grew up with playing classical music, and I'd just like to thank Edinburgh District Council for the free music lessons. And let's keep hold of them. And then I went on to discover Scottish traditional music through an Ali Bain record, and got very involved in the Ceilidh scene, the urban Ceilidh scene in the cities mainly. It was Edinburgh and Glasgow, although it kind of, now it's everywhere across Scotland. But there was a time, believe me, there wasn't like that much, so much traditional music going on out in the sort of more rural parts. Although I think I might get shot down in flames, so I won't go any further on that. I'm sure there actually was. But anyway, the urban Ceilidh scene kind of revived Scottish music big time, sort of through kind of 70s into the 90s. Then I discovered klezmer music, as we've been playing. Yeah, so I suppose I struggled with like, well, which one should I be doing, and what should I, and which is me, and what's my identity around this. And so it's really kind of latterly, and a lot of it through meeting and playing with Michael, actually, kind of really realizing that actually all of it is really part of what we do, and it's all relevant. And so we do quite a bit of a kind of a mix of Scottish, Jewish, Yiddish, because we are in Scotland, and Scotland is all of these things. So, and then just to go back to my parents, who still live in this amazing place 12 miles outside Edinburgh, they're still digging and growing and planting, and they still have the 5-foot lily that is now growing in their garden, and it blossoms every year, and it's made Scottish babies like I have. And my middle name is Lily. So okay, so we're going to play a bit of a kind of medley of Scottish, Jewish. See if you can guess which is which. It may all blur into one, because as Michael was saying earlier, this is dance music, and dance music has a lot in common wherever you are.
Someone was actually listening music. The first tune is kind of like, it's, we'll call it taksim, improvisation. It's like similar to a pibrach in the piping tradition and then Scottish tradition.
Yeah, this is definitely not for dancing, the first one.
Let's make sure we're
Thank you very much. We haven't played for any dancing for a really long time, so next time we'll hopefully have our live audience actually do some proper dancing.
Right.
And all of you guys out there as well. We were meant to be doing a Kaylee on Aaron, do you remember? Just before, and then lockdown happened, but we would have been. So hello anybody who's on Aaron, and hope see you one day.
We were actually supposed to be doing a Jewish Kaylee on Aaron with
Yeah.
Yiddish traditional dancing and some Scottish too.
Yeah.
And as we do. So I guess how are we doing on time, by the way? We're here at a remote eco yoga retreat here in the west of Scotland. So there are no clocks anywhere. I mean, this is a place where, you know, the idea is to, you know, break free of the bonds of time.
We've been doing a bit of that today.
Right.
Yeah.
Are those minutes that you're?
Okay, so it's 7:45.
It's 7:45.
Yeah, and we've got till
Till 7:45, don't we?
no, we've got till 15:15.
Oh, right.
10 past. Yeah, yeah. Shout loudly through the Zoom link, organisers. But I'm pretty certain that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, we're fine. In fact, we might even.
But officially it was 7:15 to 8:25. Oh, it's 7:45. Okay, good.
It's 7:45. Fine.
That's right.
Right.
And it's Thursday, isn't it?
It doesn't really matter when you're in a yoga centre.
Right,
What
right.
the day is.
Right. Yeah, the day consists of sun, rain, sun, fog, rain. So I guess right. That brings us maybe to my story of how I came to Scotland and came to be here. In that I began life, to the best of my knowledge, in many of you are familiar with Hollywood, California. I was actually born in Hollywood. I think a lot of people are familiar with the Hollywood sign up in the Hollywood Hills, and I actually was born in Kaiser Foundation Hospital on Sunset Boulevard, beneath the Hollywood sign. And so when people ask me what sign were you born under, I can say the Hollywood sign. And through a variety of circuitous routes, well, I should back up a little bit and say the way I got there was that my father and my entire family on my father's side, a lot of siblings and my grandparents and so forth, came from Eastern Lithuania, what's now Western Belarus, also in the Russian Empire. Very similar story to what I sang about in Saikon's song, Crossing the Border. I was going to say I was very fortunate to grow up with a lot of people that were like the people in particular, the grandfather that he described in that song, except those people were not my grandparents, they were my aunts and uncles and parents to one extent or another. And so my father and the last of his family to leave Europe came in a long time ago, came to Boston to New England once again in 1912. And I was born quite a few years later, again, beneath the Hollywood sign. And then at age 12, I made a very radical move for the US or North America. I moved from Southern California to New England. And that's kind of like to me, it was kind of like, in some ways, moving from Mexico to Britain. And there were aspects of New England. Of course, most of my family was in Boston and around and in New England, but there were aspects of it that were similar to the Edinburgh that Gica described before. It was compared to Southern California, it seemed in some ways dark and grimy, and but at the same time, it was also living in Scotland now. I mean, I've come to realize that like New England is kind of like wooden Scotland. It's like, you know, or wooden Britain. It's like Britain, and especially Northern Britain, made of wood. Or, you know, Scotland, and the Scottish, particularly the Scottish fishing towns and some of the cities on the east coast of Scotland where I live in the eastern of Fife are kind of like stone New England. So, and now I have a great deal of nostalgia for, you know, kind of that New England part of my life, which was at first a kind of a great shock. So where does that leave us? Well, then I lived for many, many years in New York City, actually in Manhattan, in the belly of the beast, and was part of the creation, the founding of this kind of this Yiddish music and cultural revival that sometimes we call the Klezmer revitalization or the Klezmer revival, and the Yiddish cultural renaissance, which there's, you know, a great deal that's going on now in the world around that. And so previous to really moving here to Scotland, I had been in Scotland once in my life before. That was in 1991 for 10 days, couple weeks maybe, mostly up in the Highlands, coming to visit Scotland. And while it was beautiful, strangely enough, it was the most alien place to me I had ever been, because I have no roots here as far as heritage, family heritage at least. I have always had a great love for Scottish traditional music, and also a great sympathy for various Scottish struggles for, let's say, independence, etc., in terms of not being a you know, struggles to not be a colonial part of the. I'm on. We have passed a glass of water. Is that symbolic? But I didn't have the same kind of personal connection to Scotland, and even though that, you know, I was here with my partner at the time, and while we ostensibly speak versions of the same language, it kind of felt like whatever we said, especially trying to be friendly and nice and funny with people, kind of went over people's heads. Whatever they said, you know, to us went over our heads. So about 13 years ago, Lamayam, by the way, my wife Emily got a job at the University of St. Andrews, and when I realized, in order to, you know, that ultimately, in order to stay together and for me to move on to the next stage of my life, life after Manhattan, I would need to move to Scotland, not only to Scotland, but to the East Uke of Fife. And at first I was like, no, it has to be Scotland. It couldn't be anywhere else. You know, could it at least be Nova Scotia, Cape Breton? That would be wonderful. I mean, Cape Breton is, you know, a fabulous place, and it would be practically just as Scottish, and it would be all the great music there. But it's connected to North America, and maybe needless to say, in the intervening years, I've come very much to love while I'm living here in Scotland, and thank my lucky stars that I live here in all kinds of ways, and live in a former fishing village, still a crabbing and lobstering village in the right 200 meters from the sea in the East Nuke of Fife. And that's been a wonderful blessing, but a very unexpected turn in my life. So as Gica spoke about before, here we are, the two of us, as Jews in Scotland, Gica having grown up here, me having come here at a much later point in my life, but negotiating these very interesting threads, interweaving threads of Jewishness and European Jewish heritage with Scottish life today in every respect, but including, of course, Scottish traditional culture, Scottish traditional music. And I'm loving the journey. I can think of few places, as much as I feel, I've always felt much more comfortable in terms of this side of the Atlantic in Eastern Europe. I feel like this is one of the most wonderful places I could live at this point. So with that in mind, I'd like to kind of go back to maybe do a song that brings hopefully all of these threads together. It's a song I wrote about my father. My father died 41 years ago. And he was considerably older than, well, not only was he older than I was, but he was nearly 50 when I was born. So it's not like my father was, died at such an early age. But 2 weeks after he died, I started to write a song about him. And he was like Sai Khan's grandfather in Crossing the Border. He was buried in New England in the fall, right around this time of year. And I started to write a song about him then. I wrote a couple of preliminary verses and said, I can't really sum up this man, first of all, at this point, and maybe not in general. And I put it aside for 38 years until a friend of mine heard an early kind of rehearsal recording of me first working out the song and said, I really like this. This is amazing. Maybe you should do something with this. And so a couple of years ago, I actually picked up the thread of this song again and finished it in at least to the point where it's at now. And since my family came from a small place in the forest in Lithuania, a small town, and the natural world was always so important to my family and to me. So this song really speaks to many experiences I had in particular with my father, also with my mother was part of this as well too. In the natural world, both in California, where we started out, in New England in particular, especially a place up on an island in a lake in New Hampshire where my family had a place. I know it sounds posh, but it was an island that with a couple of shacks on it that my father and my uncle bought in 1937 for $275. And so there's a lot in this song about that. And then there's a lot of imagery in the song that talks about where I live now, where Emily and I live now in the East Nuke of Fife, by the sea, surrounded by fields and woods and all kinds of creatures, hares and foxes and badgers, and so it's and part of it is mainly in Yiddish, but parts of it are in English. I'm sorry, it's mainly in English, but parts of it are in Yiddish. And just I wanted to clue you into what some of the Yiddish verses say. Pick this up a little bit. I could just tell you that I wrote a nice poetic translation here. So the Yiddish verses, which don't all happen at once, say, what becomes of people at the end of the long, weary road? We barely catch our breath and they're gone. Time bolts like a hare into the deep woods at sunset on the fields, darkening in blue. Take with you your axe and saw, your wheelbarrow of wise talk. Take with you your boots, the ones of leather, both of them. Myself, I'm coming towards you, but I'm not following you quite yet. On your white path, silent as the snow. In my eyes, I see you darkly, but in my thoughts, you're bright. You were but a human being. Still, for humanity, you stood. You can only count on me to be true to your virtue, with honesty for the world. Nice, okay. My father was an immigrant from far across the sea. He came from a world away to end his journey here at the edge of a field by a line of maple trees, glowing red and yellow in the autumn of the year. Born in an empire on the very edge of time, in a small town in the forest, he came into this world. Wheels of war were turning, fires of change were burning. He sailed away to a distant land. Ooit was je elk van Eden nog een lang weg den Eden. Wir haben kama wat in onze zijn genito. Die Zeit lebt wie ein Poschaweg im tiefen Wald allein. Ich gehe da die Felder dunklen die Kuppel. Hoi neem dir niet dein Hakkunzee, dein Tatschkalef, Kultugerät. Nimm dir nie die Stiefel an, die Poschede, die Seweg. Wir können schämen, doch nicht jeder noch, auf dein stillen Weg, dein weißen Bischenei. In the murmur of the maples, in the sighing of the pines, in the wail of the midnight loon when the glowing moon hangs low, in the ripple of the silent fish that stir the depths below, your fire is in me everywhere I go. On the frozen pond in winter, that's a different verse. When the ice is out in April, you pull the boat up in the cove. Hear the thunder quake on the summer's lake in the old sunset glow. And when December's icy hand lays bare the wooded grove, your tracks are in the deep rounded in snow. Ой, тишие, что чудишь, так рвется, так и бьется, чем наберется, тобой поднимется. Тише едешь, дальше будешь, так рвется, так и бьется, что будет, сегодня надо выпить. Wir spielen finster in die Ecken, wir spielen lichtig in Gedanken. Wo ist ein Mensch als du, die wessen doch für Menschheit sich gestellt. En zitten af weer van tussen dein en mijn zijn gedraaid. En meteen kan ik hier naar. Now for all the roads we traveled and the ones we didn't go, for all the tears these many years, this twilight sun I've seen, and when the fog of autumn lies upon the rocks below, my heart is like a heron on the wing.
So, I think we've got one more, have we?
Aye, right. Ascolti review. Minuto 10.
Lovely.
Yeah,
Diana.
our stories.
Yeah. Great. Well, where are we? What's the time? Oh, so we're actually just perfect timing.
All right.
We have one more number for everybody, and hope you've been enjoying yourselves out there and sharing with this great rich culture of Scottish, Jewish, and the mix of everything in between, American.
Scoju, as we
Yeah.
call it. Yeah, so we'll do the deep Jewish thing to say farewell. This is these are tunes from I know from my old time Yiddish fiddle guru, Leon Schwartz of Shalom, Abelib Strauss, who came from also somewhere far away, came from a village in the Bukovina region, Western Ukraine, northern Romania, and it kind of takes us through a musical journey there. All right.
Can we just
Yeah.
I have no idea, but I think yours might have slipped a tiny bit. I'm saying I'm right.
No, you can be right. I mean, I just want,
Yeah.
you're intuitive yourself, right?
Myself,
Yeah.
as much as I ever will be.
Here we are at Evening Yoga.
This is just day one. Give me a few days.
Right. when you keep a fiddle near a wood stove, you know, you never know what can happen. Bye-bye. That pesky Easter egg. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Good.
Thanks for joining us here on Radio in Believer and
Yeah.
in this Skojek Klezmer, as we've been calling it.
Yeah, so it'd be great to see everybody's faces, but all we can see is a little black camera. But how many people have we got? Audience, can you see Emily? No. Okay, we'll discover later, but we hope everybody's had a fantastic time. And we're going to just carry on the party here. The night is young. We're in the Highlands. We've got a bottle of whiskey.
Right. We can go outside and play in front of the badger cam. Okay. Seid uns gesund. Be healthy, everyone. Stay well.
Thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you so much for being a part of this for Skojek. We're delighted that you came with us. Thanks to everyone who joined and this event is recorded. So if you'd like to see it or listen to it again, be on our website, on social media. And thank you everyone for coming tonight. Thank you so much, Michael and Gica. It's been great.